So Pope Francis went on 60 Minutes, and he made some interesting comments that I'll break down here for you. Now, by the way, 60 Minutes is a known copyright shark-type production, so hook a brother up with some support on Patreon and sub to the YouTube channel, because this is rolling the dice even by talking about this. I'll play the little clips here for you. Let's start with this one. He talks about conservatism.
There are conservative bishops in the United States that oppose your new effort to revisit teachings and traditions. How do you address their criticism?
You used an adjective, conservative. That is, conservative is one who clings to something and does not want to see beyond that. It is a suicidal attitude. Because one thing is to take tradition into account, to consider situations from the past, but quite another is to be closed up inside a dogmatic box.
He said conservatism is a suicidal attitude. And he basically says they're like bitter and they're dogmatic. I did not expect him to come out that aggressively against conservatism. Usually the Pope is a little more like diplomatic and dances around the edges type stuff. But he's like, nah, bro, you guys have a suicidal ideology. Look, he's right from this perspective. If the Catholic Church wants to remain relevant moving into the future, obviously you have to evolve with the times and not be total fucking psychopaths. Right? You can't still cling to gay people are evil in 2024 when the overwhelming majority of the world is like, get over it. They're just regular people and they just happen to be attracted to people of the same sex. It's whatever. So he's right about that. He is. But at the same time, he talks about, oh, it's a suicidal ideology and they're very dogmatic and they cling to something. And it's like, homie, you're the head of a religion. Religion, by definition, is dogmatic and clinging to something. It's like you have your doctrines, you believe your doctrines are the fundamental truth from God, and then you react accordingly and you live life according to that. So look, this has always been the contradiction of the Pope, right? Like he's seemingly a good guy. He believes in being kind to everybody. But then at the same time, it's like you don't realize that oftentimes your conservative critics from a religious perspective, they have a legit beef when they say, hey, the doctrine says the opposite of what you're saying right now. Why should I trust you over the doctrine, right? And this is the problem with religion. It's like, as long as you're pretending like this is coming from, some absolute iron law of a God in the sky, then how much wiggle room is there, right? But I will say, I like that he's tried to modernize Christianity. And you guys know he said nice things about gay people and nice things about atheists. But of course, he can only go so far. Sometimes he still has backwards opinions on, whatever it may be. I'm blanking on it now. Was it trans people that he had backwards opinions on, or was it divorce or something like that? Yeah, it's going to be a mixed bag. He's as good as you're ever going to get from a pope, but it's still going to be kind of a mixed bag. So I think I have one more here for you. The other clip is not working, but he basically says something like human beings are fundamentally good, right? And that's interesting because it sort of flies in the doctrine of original sin. The idea of it's like, we're all kind of bad is the default perspective from a lot of different branches of Christianity. I mean, my take on it's a little bit of both, right? I think it's too complicated to just say human beings are good or human beings are bad. I think most people are both good and bad, and I think some are pure good and some are pure bad, but oftentimes, honestly, their circumstances and their environment and their culture can bring out either the good or the bad. And, certainly as Crystal said to me when we were talking about this, certainly doesn't feel like we're good right now looking at what's happening in Gaza, right? It certainly doesn't feel like humanity has evolved even a little bit. I mean, you look at this and you think, Jesus, have we changed at all from like fucking the 1200s? No, there's still hardcore tribalism and in-group, out-group bullshit and going after the poor and the vulnerable and just wiping people out and turning a blind eye to things that are just totally indefensible and arming and funding the genocide. And right now, it seems like a much stronger argument that human beings are inherently bad, not that they're inherently good. But again, I think it's both. I think it's much more complex to just put a blanket rule on it and say this is the case in all scenarios. No, most people are both good and bad. Some are pure good, some are pure bad. It's complicated, but damn, man, I didn't know. I knew he was not a conservative. I did not know he was this hostile to conservatism, to call it a suicidal attitude. Cue the absolute meltdown from conservative Catholics and cue the meltdown from right-wing pundits. I'm sure there's going to be conservative pundits in this country absolutely lashing out at him. But look, man, I mean, it's true, right? The whole idea of conservatism is we are trying to conserve what is, the status quo. Like, there's a reason why things are how they are. Let's try to protect things as they are. It's a real embrace of tradition and the way things are done. And in a world like we live in now, to make that argument, I think is embarrassing. Saying, what, this is as good as it can be? This is as good as it can get? We don't need more progress. We don't need more change. We don't need to strive for a better future. We need to protect stuff as it is. Why? Because as it is ideal? As it is preferable? No, it is a narrow-minded, dogmatic view, right? So, interesting. Go check out the whole interview. He says a bunch of stuff that's fascinating. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.